What is home? Yes, we have our homeland Israel, and yes, we have homes throughout the diaspora. But our current reality is complex. Israel's at war, and anti-Semitism is rising around the world. So what does that mean for us? What does that mean for this question of home? Join me, Izzy, as I speak with Israeli and diaspora Jewry to better understand this new complex reality and unpack where we put ourselves in this physical and spiritual war. This is the My Israel Narrative podcast. I just want to say, first of all, Rudy, thank you for joining. I know you've been really all over. I think in the past week, I've seen you posting all of your own work, just in response to a lot of things that are happening, and you're constantly on the move, on the go, but always willing, I think, to take the opportunity to speak, and always eloquently, on various platforms. So I have to say, when I started this project, a lot of people asked me, they said, have you spoken to Rudy Rochman yet? And et cetera. And I said, luckily we spoke a while back, but definitely wanted to get you more involved and get your take and an update on what you've been doing and what's been happening for you recently. And I think a main theme that really draws people into what you do, a main theme across your different works, is that you really challenge people to think and to really, really question the truth, and always gracefully. And that's not an easy thing to come by. I don't think it's for everyone. The way that you're able to stay so calm and so eloquent in how you speak is inspirational for me. And I think why a lot of people are drawn to your work and what you do. And I saw a quote recently at the end of a video you posted in relation to one of your projects. And you said, it was a Rav Jonathan Sachs post. It said, quote, "Optimism is the belief that things are going to get better. Hope is the belief that we can make things better." And I think you encapsulate that beautifully in all of your work. So thank you again for joining. Just want to hand it off if you want to just share a little bit what's been going on for you, a quick bit, some background that you think is important for everyone to hear, something fun that happened to you this week or that you did, just to kick things off a bit.
For sure. So very exciting life that we're living in. Exciting times, lots to do. The way I would characterize my work is I see every generation throughout Jewish history has different challenges, and each individual within that generation has different abilities and potential to make the world a better place, whether on the micro or macro level. And I see certain issues. Of course, with time, I will see different issues or more issues, just like everyone else. They have an evolution process. And the current issues that I see facing the Jewish people are assimilation, anti-Semitism, lack of identity, lack of being united with a common vision and using our home as a vehicle to actually pursue creating light into this world, the different tribes that have been displaced and have yet to come home, the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians that has yet to be resolved. So all those issues are things that to my eyes, which are reflections of what my soul feels, are things that need to be fixed within this generation. So I dedicate my time to being able to heal those problems and allow us to write the next chapter of Jewish history. So those are the things that I primarily focus on. I came back from Africa a week ago. We're doing a documentary on the lost tribes of Jews around the world. The first season is in Africa, so we were just in Uganda filming one of our episodes. Previously, we were in Nigeria. Next stop is going to be South Africa and Zimbabwe, filming the Lemba population. And if you ask me for this week, I think one of the biggest news within the Jewish world is the recent comments that Whoopi Goldberg made about the Holocaust, equating the Jewish people to being white and not really understanding how offensive she was sounding, because she said the Nazis and the Jews, this was, the same people just fighting each other. It was white on white crime. And Jews are not white, because being white is not only about skin color. You can have a pale Asian and they're not white. You can have a pale Hispanic individual and they're not white. You can have a Black African albino who might be even paler in their pigmentation on their skin than Europeans, and they're not white, because first of all, the concept of race is a social construct, but furthermore, it's more than just your skin color. It's also your status within a society and your origins. And the Jewish people, although some, not all, but some had an experience in Europe, they do not originate from Europe, and they never were treated as Europeans in Europe. In fact, they were discriminated against and killed and persecuted and massacred and removed from their lands and oppressed for thousands of years for not being white. And 6 million Jews were killed for not being white. And even today, you go to New York City, 13% of the population is Jewish, and over 56% of the total hate crimes are against Jews. So we do not experience white status. Yes, sometimes some Jews in certain situations may be white passing, but that's a way more nuanced conversation. Jews are often wearing things that they can tell that you're Jewish. We have names that you can't run away from them being Jewish, whereas other people that are minorities may have names that may be white passing with their names if someone is looking on a list. So the conversation of white passing is way more nuanced than you look this way and you have this experience. So this experience should override all other experiences. I think it's a conversation we need to open up. I don't think that Whoopi is anti-Semitic in herself. I think she's just very I would say misinformed on what it means to go through a Jewish experience. And it's really not her fault. I think the Jewish people have not done a good job into communicating, what is anti-Semitism, what is our experience, and earning our rights like other minorities have done in the past, 50, 60, 70 years. To earn their rights, we need to do this the same.
Yeah, I heard you specifically that last point saying, that Whoopi is not an anti-Semite and she's uninformed. And I think, unfortunately, beyond the non-Jewish world, even within the Jewish world, a lot of people are uninformed. And that's what only adds to this issue, and also adds to, a lot of the response around what she said was, we should cancel her. We should cancel her. We should, just write things off. There was that side of the story. And I think from your angle, it's no, let's open the conversation. Let's do something about it. Let's inform people. But my question for you, and where I kind of wanted to start here is how do we go about doing that? How do we, for example, inform people that Judaism is not, if we're not confined to one part of the world, we do have Judea, now Israel, that we believe we rightfully belong to and are meant to be. How do we start creating that understanding and that connection for people? And also, if you could just expound more on what is the need for this inextricable connection. I know historically we understand Jews come from Judea and therefore we are tied to Israel, but if you can explain more even just about that connection and why it should be relevant for people today and how they can.
For sure. First of all, in terms of Whoopi, I don't think she should be canceled. I don't think she should be labeled an anti-Semite, although what she said was very offensive. It was very wrong, but it came from a place of just being miseducated. And to be honest, people should be careful to speak on the issues that they're not so educated about. I'm sure if someone were to talk about Black issues or women issues or any sort of minority issues, and they were not educated in that space and said something that was offensive, there would be a reaction in response to that person. So it's only normal that there's a reaction to what Whoopi said, but I hope that she takes the time to really educate herself, because later she went on a talk show on the Colbert Show and kind of doubled down on her position and very clearly did not understand what she did wrong. That's why I made the video, to express that. In terms of our connection with Judaism and the land of Israel and all that stuff, we have to break it down. Judaism is not a religion. I know a lot of the Jewish people for the past 200-300 years have been speaking about our identity, culture, way of life, traditions, value system, aspirations as a religion. So when Jews are saying Judaism is our religion, what we mean is that these are our traditions, these are our spirituality, this is our history, this is our customs and our holidays and our experiences and our values and our laws and our aspirations. Like, we're encompassing all of that within the term religion when we're saying Judaism is our religion. But the actual term in itself, the actual word, is defined as a belief system in a God, deity, book, or prophet. Meaning, if you do not believe in the God, deity, book, or prophet, you are not a part of that religion. If we look at any example of religions, we can take the largest three, like Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism. If one does not believe in Jesus, they are not a Christian. If one does not believe in Muhammad, the Quran, or in Islam, they're not a Muslim. If one does not believe in Buddha or in the philosophies of Buddha, they're not a Buddhist. And so a religion is really an ideology, right? A belief system that anyone can be a part of, right? If someone decides that they believe in Jesus, they automatically are a Christian, believe in Muhammad, automatically become Muslim, and so on and so on. So it's dependent on if an individual believes in it or doesn't believe in it. Whereas in Judaism, even if a Jew does not believe in Hashem and the Torah, they're still a Jew. And if someone wants to become a Jew, they don't just say, I accept the Torah, I'm a Jew. They have to go through years of a process of adopting an identity, a history, a culture, a value system, traditions, the experience of anti-Semitism as you now become a Jew, the aspirations of that people, the connection to the land, the language, and so much more. You're joining a native nation slash civilization. I would compare it as to the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Native American nations, the Native Canadian First Nations, Tibetans, Yazidis, Kurds, Aboriginals, Maoris, Polynesians. If you're understanding those types of native civilizations eternally connected to a piece of land that is rooted to the core of who that people are and who they will forever be, that's what I would explain the Jewish people's land and connection to the land. So to me, Judaism is basically the portable suitcase that we created when we were displaced from Judea, and ism being a social human-made structure. So whether you have Zionism, feminism, communism, capitalism, whatever ism you have, good or bad ideas, these are social structures. So Judaism is the social structure we created to preserve what we had when we were displaced from Judea. Our people are also called Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel. We're also called Hebrews, Ivrim. We're also called Jews. It's a more modern term to define the same people. So we are a native nation slash civilization eternally connected to this piece of land. Judaism was created to preserve that identity, to pass it down medor vador, generation to generation, with the aspiration of Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, one day coming back home and reviving our civilization in Jerusalem and being able to actually serve our purpose, which is to create light around the world. So I would say that is the relationship of the Jewish people to the land. The land is not only our mother and father, does not only belong to our ancestors, but also to our descendants. But I would say the land is our soulmate, because we have a mission to achieve with that land. It's a relationship we're supposed to unite and do something with it, not just to come from it that we're forever connected to or to pass down to our ancestors, but we have a mission to do with this land. There's a unity and a family that is supposed to be created from this light, and creation is supposed to come from it. And so that is the relationship I would say the Jewish people have to the land of Judea slash Israel.
Okay. I think that's a really key point, the fact that we have something to do with it, because I think a lot of people look at Israel and how it is today, and they take issue with it for various reasons, religiously, politically. We can go on a whole conversation in that respect, but I think what you're saying, it also points to that there is what to do with it, and you need to take that ownership. And it's the same way, right? Like in any community you live in, or any, right? Jews right now are living all over the world. They're involved with their communities. They're involved with making things better and changing things. So too, even more so with Israel. And we've seen that, Baruch Hashem, in the past 70 plus years where we've had the formal state of Israel, and so much has changed and so much has developed in just such a short amount of time that it can't be overlooked that there is this intrinsic connection. But it's up to us to, I think, from what you're saying, to take that ownership and do something about it. So I want to take it a little bit back for a second. I know that when you chose to go to Columbia University, it was a very intentional decision. Based on some conversations that you had, I think you were previously studying elsewhere, and seeing sort of the rise in anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, these different movements, and you saw not much was being done, and it clearly sparked something in you. I'm not sure, maybe I don't want to misspeak here if there was even a before to this part. So I just wanted to ask, usually people are not so proactive or not so motivated to be so proactive, and especially in these kind of spaces where it's a really sticky situation. So just wondering if you could share a little bit, what shaped your specific narrative on Israel and the Jewish people, and made you want to take on this role? Was it just innate? Was there certain experiences beforehand? How did you get there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the experiences beforehand go back many different lifetimes. I don't think this is the first time that I come into this world and fight for the Jewish people. It's always been deeply ingrained in me from, as far as I could remember. All I cared about was to undo things that were done against the Jewish people. So a lot of times I thought growing up, maybe I had lived in the time where Romans had destroyed the civilization of the Jewish people. And, all I can connect to is to undo that. There's some people that are very marked and affected by the Holocaust or by different tragedies, even though they didn't live there. That's something that really speaks to them. And of course, I feel for everything that the Jewish people go through, but specifically the destruction by the Romans is something that has always felt very deep to me. Even when I go to Rome, I feel uncomfortable. I feel like this is not the place I'm supposed to be, and there was an injustice done. So it's always been something that I've felt very deep. I would say growing up with parents that were very intellectual, that were Jewish leaders in their communities and their times, that put me through amazing opportunities of education, diversity of different opinions and perspectives, taught me to have an open mind, to really try to dig deep for the truth. And the fact that I've constantly traveled and moved around my entire life impacted a lot of how I see the world. All of my grandparents were born in different countries. On my mother's side in Morocco and Algeria, on my father's side in Poland and Belgium. And I realized it didn't matter where we were born, grew up, lived, and traveled to, that we would always be persecuted for being Jews, because all of my grandparents were kicked out of the countries they were born and living in for being Jewish, right? My father's side, they survived the Shoah by hiding in attics in France. And on my mother's side, they survived the pogroms that happened in Oujda, which is the village in between Morocco and Algeria, and they fled to France as well. So that's how my parents were first generation born there. I was second generation born there. Moved to Israel when I was 3, then to Miami when I was 5. 3 different continents by the age of 5 with 3 different languages already develops your perspective on the world, that it's much bigger than just this particular place you're living in, or just the mindset that you've experienced and been exposed to. And especially in Miami, which is just one of the most diverse places that you will have. Unlike other places in America, people aren't melting. People are really keeping their identity. Second, third generation born in Miami, they still identify as Argentinian, Venezuelan, Colombian, right, Brazilian, Cuban, Haitian, Jamaican. And that's the environment that I automatically grew up in by the age of 5. And so that started making me try to find what is my answer? Where am I from? Because they're calling me French because I was born in France, but I left there when I was 3 and I'm second generation born there. And I'm realizing if my grandparents had been born there, then they would have been killed for being Jewish in the time of the Shoah. So what makes me really French? And then when I go to France to visit my family, I'm treated as the American cousin, and I'm going to Jewish day school until high school. And I was raised fully Sephardic because my dad adopted my mom's customs when he married my mom. But then going to Jewish day school, they'll say that I'm Ashkenazi and tell me to go to Ashkenazi Minyan, which I have no idea about. So I have a constant this identity crisis. I went through a very traumatic anti-Semitic experience at the age of 7, where me and my mother got kicked off of a bus for being Jewish. And this is where things started to fall into perspective, where I realized that I'm a Jew. It doesn't matter that I was born in France, that my grandparents were born in this country, that country, or that I was raised in America. I'm a Jew. And it's much more than believing or not believing. It's much more than just these traditions. It's ingrained in me, and my kids will be Jewish and their kids will be Jewish. And all of my ancestors were Jews. And this is really the core of who I am. And being a Jew is a synonym for being an Israelite, because I'm not from the tribe of Judah. I'm from the tribe of Levi from both sides of my family. So what makes me a Jew if the word Jew is from Judah? The reason I'm called a Jew is because the last name of our civilization 2,000 years ago, when our ancestors were displaced, was called Judea, hence coming from Judea. Even the tribe of Levi and Binyamin that was living there, we all became known as Judeans. So if the only reason I'm called a Jew is because the name of the land was Judea at the time we were displaced, and not because I'm from the tribe of Judah, and the name of that land today is Israel, which is actually the proper name of our ancestors' nation and also the land, that makes me Israeli. So that's the moment that really made me understand who I am. And that moment of anti-Semitism also made me promise that the next time I would deal with such a situation, I'd be ready. I promised myself there wouldn't be another time that I wouldn't be prepared emotionally, physically, psychologically, spiritually, mentally, ideologically, understanding what is happening in front of me. And that's kind of what started the path of really being an activist. And I define activist very different than an advocate. An advocate is someone who is supporting of a cause, someone who's supporting of an idea or of an issue. And an activist is someone who plays a role in moving those issues forward and changing that reality, like being a player versus a fan. So age of 17, graduated high school, joined the army in Israel. And when I finished the army, I started school at UCLA, which is where I started to experience a lot of anti-Semitism on college campuses. And I saw what was going on. I saw what the other side was doing. I realized how they were appropriating different minority struggles in order to convince the pop culture of the next generation that the source of the problem is the Jewish people, which is exactly how systemic anti-Semitism works, just evolves throughout time, but it's basically find the source of the suffering of a community and find a way to attach it and associate it to Israel / the Jewish people. And I started to look within. What is the Jewish community doing about this? What are these organizations that have been set up that have millions of dollars to actually stand up for the Jewish people? What are we doing? What are the campus groups doing? What are the heads of organizations and rabbis and communities? What are we doing? And I realized that they were doing nothing. And when I went to them and say, hey, we need to debate, we need to expose bad opinions, we need to narrate our own story, we need to create coalitions, we need to be active, like, let's do something. All I could hear in response was either don't do anything, it'll go away. If you do something, it'll just get worse. We actually need to put our heads down. And that immediately reminded me of something that I had taken away from the trip of March to the Living, which is a trip that many Jews do, and I would recommend every Jew to do so, where you go to Poland for a week and then to Israel for a week and you learn about the Shoah. Now, when I went on that trip at 17 years old, right before joining the army, what I took away most from that trip was a packet of letters that they gave to us as we were on the bus. And in these packet of letters were letters written by different Jewish leaders at the time in the decade previously to the Shoah beginning. So as anti-Semitism is rising and rising within society, what were the different Jewish leaders and rabbis and community heads saying to each other about the rise of anti-Semitism? Because it didn't happen overnight. There was a decade of anti-Semitism rising. And basically you can read the same answers that I was getting from these different Jewish leaders in LA. Don't worry about it, it'll go away. Wow. If you do something, it'll just get worse. You even had Jews making the argument that they needed to side with Hitler because, yeah, maybe Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, but that was just a crazy period he had in prison. Anyways, he's going to get into a position of power, so might as well financially support him, so at least he has a relationship with us. And I read that and I realized, like, we made the Shoah happened not because they were so strong. They happened because we were so weak. We failed our responsibility as standing up for ourselves. Why do we say never again? Because we take a generational commitment to make sure it doesn't happen again. And so if it does happen again, we failed, right? When you have a child, right, there's bad people outside in the world. It's your responsibility as a parent to protect your child. And if you let your child go into a dangerous situation, you failed your child. And yes, of course, they took the actions as to killing the Jews, but we allowed them to do that. We had very little resistance. We didn't stand up. We didn't change pop culture's opinion about the Jewish people. We didn't stand up. We walked straight into the gas chambers. And there is a responsibility the Jews have to wake up to, that we need to empower ourselves. This is not about blaming the victim, but about making sure that we are no longer victims, about making sure that we are able to narrate our own story. And so that is kind of the mindsets that I took on. And I realized the biggest issue on campuses was not how strong the anti-Israel Jewish movements were, but how weak the pro-Israel / Israel movements were. And that's when I started to engage with different people, saying, like, why aren't we doing something? And I kept hearing this theme that really bothered me of, I'm not going to go to this school, it's too anti-Semitic. I would never send my children there. There's too much anti-Semitism. And I'm like, that's exactly where we should be going. We should be going to the darkest of places and spreading the most light. So I did a Google search and I typed in #1 most anti-Semitic school in North America. Columbia University was listed #1 that year. And so I was like, okay, that's where I'm going to transfer to. And I created a movement there to really narrate the story of the Jewish people, to empower the Jews and allies to be able to stand up for themselves and to expose voices that were against us and ideas that were against us, that were toxic, and to create a space uniting Israelis and Palestinians, which eventually grew throughout different college campuses. Then a lot of videos went viral, and that's kind of how the evolution started to take place from there.
Wow. So all I'd say to that is just wow. I think, I hope you recognize how unique that perspective is. I think it needs to be more widespread in a sense, right? Going to where the dark place is, but that's a very scary thing. It's against human nature. It's just not, most of us don't want to chase the darkness. But I think once you bring in that element of chase the darkness by bringing light, it shifts the whole narrative. I think people are afraid of it because for them, it feels like I need to go out there with my sword. No, just bring light, bring the truth, bring emet. And that's what I said in the beginning. That is what is so special about what you do and how you do it, is you bring the emet. People cannot fight. If you bring truth and you stand firm in your truth, it's much harder to go against. So, I mean, I guess, though, to play a little of devil's advocate on that, I think especially we saw this past war, in May. This was the first time that I was living in Israel and experiencing it myself, being here. And the frustration I felt was so much stronger for many reasons. But I also saw just from friends and family outside of Israel, expressing on social media, really it was mainly social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, what have you, expressing the truth, right? They were putting the facts. This is what's happening. This is really what's happening. No. But something about social media, I think it just, I wouldn't say for people to not do it, but it falls flat or it falls on deaf ears some of the time. If you don't have a platform, if you're not someone like yourself who, I saw your video you posted just last night, has almost 40,000 views, which is incredible. And I hope more people should watch it. And I'll post your Insta link on the podcast notes so people can follow. But people don't necessarily have that audience. So speaking the truth might just fall on deaf ears or might be met with ignorance or what have you. So what advice do you have for people if social media just isn't cutting it? How can they go out maybe into their communities, into, I don't know, something tangible that they can take away? Because I think, especially in recent months and years, it's becoming more frustrating to just use the social media arena so much.
Yeah, so a few things. First of all, relating to what you said before, everyone has their own light to spread, right? Some people can be good at communicating and making videos and shifting pop culture. Others can be good at solving diseases. Others can be good at helping, pollution and making the planet a lot cleaner. Everyone has an ability to create different light. You have to be in tune with what your eyes, which are a reflection of your soul, see. People see certain problems because there's a reason they see those problems, because their soul within them is telling them that that's the issue that they need to deal with. And those problems can change and evolve as they grow and as they mature and as they understand the world in different ways. And they have to use their skills, which everyone has talents. For example, public speaking is not something I was born with. It's something that I've had to develop. I'm actually very introverted. I was, challenged with language because I learned French and then Hebrew and then English. So I knew 3 languages, but I wasn't really good at, any of them until, I started to really practice and work on myself and become better at that. So I wouldn't say that that's something that I had. I would say that's not something that I had to work on, but everyone has their skills or skills that they can work on themselves to gain. And they have to join their abilities with the problems that they see in order to fix issues. And it can be on the micro level, individuals, family, workplace, and it could be on the macro level, social media, rest of the world, pop culture. So that's what I would say. In response also to what you said earlier of people, being afraid of going and spreading light where there's darkness, that is the mission statement of the Jewish people. I mean, that is our purpose, to spread light where there is darkness. So that applies for individuals and that applies for the collective. And a lot of people have this mentality, unfortunately, that I think comes from thousands of years of trauma that the Jewish people have faced of, not going to the hard places and staying in our little shtetls and putting our heads down and making friends with the king and queen or emperor in order for us to feel that we have this idea of safety, which eventually gets overturned because at some point someone will stand up against us and society will turn against us. And then we see things happening over and over and over again. So I would kind of give an example to what I mean by that. Every time I'd go to France, I would always wear my Magen David, never tucked it in. And my family would always tell me, what are you doing? You can't wear that in public. You would get attacked. And I always refused to take it on. Now, I didn't have the words to articulate and to express why I wasn't removing. It just was against my nature to do so. But today, when I look at it, it's like, yes, maybe if I'm walking down the street, I can minimize the potential risk of an attack if I hide my Magen David, because then I would become passing as any other individual and someone would not be able to tell that I'm Jewish, maybe. However, when I'm taking this action of hiding my Magen David, I'm basically saying to the universe, I'm okay with the status quo of Jews being afraid, and I'm going to invest into that reality rather than investing into a reality of changing so the world can accept who I am and I can make the world a better place. And although you might be minimizing the potential risk of an individual attack, when you do that, you're maximizing the risk of far greater attacks for the whole collective. And so we have to take things into a holistic perspective. For me, it's not crazy to go to Columbia University in the darkest of places and go and spread light. It's crazy that we're not doing that, because when we realize long-term what that does, it will become far more dangerous for all of us than the danger we might experience as individuals if we don't take that into consideration. And that is the perspective I've had since I was little, and something that we need to realize. I'm not doing something dangerous. Not doing something is the true danger. And that's the issue here. So I would say the if you look at social media, when you're saying that it's might fall on deaf ears, and that a lot of people may not be hearing, what we're expressing, I think social media and the way it looks right now is a symptom of the core issue. Pop culture around the world has really shifted to being anti-Israel. If we want to see a different experience on social media, we have to shift pop culture. We have to create coalitions. We have to spread awareness. We have to change the narrative. We have to, evolve the spaces when talking about Palestinian struggles as only anti-Israel to something that allows both peoples to come together, which I recommend everyone to check out Habayit, which is a movement that unites Israelis and Palestinians and creates that space for a future. And, when we're talking about truth is holistic. Your experience is true and another person's experience is true. And when you combine all, you get closer to the real truth, which is something that combines all. So I think the reason for why a lot of my content has been very effective is, one, it's consistent, high quality, and it's talking about holistic truth as much as I can, right? I'll never be able to, be
Right.
the most truthful person. None of us can. Only Hashem is one truth of all. But I think we need to try to do our best to be as holistic as possible, to include different perspectives within one truth that combines them all and allows all to see themselves within it, for it to actually resonate and make true impact. And I think that's what's effective when one is trying to do something on social media. And again, there's many ways to be able to change. Someone may be good at social media, someone else may be good at public speaking, making infographics. Like even in the social media sphere, you can do many things within that space. So I would recommend anyone listening to this to be in tune with their evolution, to be in tune with what they see as wrong with the world. Why do they feel that this is an issue that they care about? It's because this is something that your soul, your neshama is speaking to you, that you feel the need to fix. And you're supposed to go and fix that. And everyone has their own skills and can work on themselves to get more, and try to unite and merge those two things in order to make the world a better place. And of course, be very much so in tune with the evolution of a person, because as you grow older, you see different problems, you have different experiences, you see the world a different way, you gain more skills. So the situation as you grow changes. So be very much so in tune with that evolution as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's true. We have to look in and see what specifically makes us tick. And it could be a small thing, like you said. And it might not be something that comes natural to us, that we feel, like you said, with public speaking. It might be something we have to work on. But if there's something that's making you tick, it's because there's something really deep within that is ready to act on that. And it's up to us to take that initiative, especially as Jewish people who are tasked with, like you said, many times over, spreading light. So I just want to close one quick question. If you could kind of summarize in a word, which might be very hard, or a phrase, just what you think of when you think of Israel, what would that be?
Israel doesn't belong to me. It belongs to my ancestors and to my descendants. It is the soulmate of our collective people. It is meant to be used as a vehicle in order to spread light into this world. It is a home that belongs to many peoples that have been eternally connected to this land. And it is the only place that I can truly breathe in. Whenever I go out of Israel, physically out of the land, I feel like I'm a fish taken out of water and I have to hold my breath. And only when I come back to this land can I finally take a deep breath in and be able to breathe and function as myself. That's my relationship with the land and how I see it.
Wow. So now when I see you traveling all over the world, I'm just gonna have this vision of you not breathing so much. So
yeah, I'm holding
more
my breath.
people and more people need to come visit here. That's
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. And yeah, this was awesome. Really, toda rabah. Thank you for coming on.
Of course.
Thanks for listening to another episode of My Israel Narrative. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow along and subscribe. Until next time, I'm Yisrael Chai.